The Navy SEAL's fist connected first. A flash of rage, a broken rule. He didn't care about the punishment, only the dog they'd hurt. Now exiled to a forgotten base in Georgia, Ethan Cole and his German shepherd Duke uncover a secret buried beneath the barracks, a drug ring disguised as a military experiment. Engines start in the dark. Someone knows they're alive, and before the night ends, faith, fire, and betrayal will collide. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of loyalty, redemption, and the grace that still walks among men. The Georgia sun burned low and gold across the training fields, the air thick with the scent of pine and diesel. Cicadas hummed like restless engines in the heat, and the air shimmered above the asphalt runway that led to the old Navy SEAL K-9 training base, now half forgotten, half alive. Ethan Cole stood at attention in front of the base commander's office, sweat crawling down the back of his neck beneath the faded tan uniform. He was 32, broad-shouldered and dark-haired, his jaw still holding the sharpness of youth, but dulled by exhaustion. There was a thin scar running from his right temple to the edge of his cheek, a reminder of the mission in Kandahar, where his best friend hadn't made it home. Ethan had that same friend's dog tag in his pocket, always. The reprimand had come quickly. Assaulting a superior officer, they called it, though Ethan preferred to remember it as stopping a bastard from kicking a dog. He had swung before he'd thought, knuckles cracking against the jaw of Lieutenant Harris, a man whose medals outnumbered his morals. It wasn't the first time Ethan had lost control, but it would be the last time the Navy tolerated it. "Cole," the base commander, Captain Mason Rourke, said from behind his desk, his voice deep, gravelly from years of cigar smoke. Mason was a man carved by both war and whiskey. Tall, square-shouldered, gray at the temples, his uniform immaculate even in the Georgia heat. "You've got two choices, discharge or reassignment." He slid a folder across the desk, eyes unreadable. "A quiet training post in Savannah. It's a kennel facility now. Rehabilitation unit. You'll be caretaker, handler, janitor, whatever it takes." Ethan clenched his jaw. "You're sending me to babysit dogs." "I'm giving you a chance," Mason replied. "Most men don't get one after what you did." He paused, his eyes softening just enough to show something like respect. "You used to fight for the right reasons, son. Don't lose that." 2 days later, Ethan arrived at the Savannah facility, a cluster of sun-bleached buildings surrounded by live oaks and Spanish moss. The gates squealed like old hinges in protest as he pushed them open. The place smelled of damp earth, hay, and something else. Memory, maybe. He found the caretaker's office empty except for a flickering fan and a note taped to the desk. Kennel 3. Name, Duke. Kennel 3 stood at the far end of the compound. Inside, behind the chain-link door, sat a German shepherd. Tall, lean, coat a mix of sable and gold, eyes amber and alive. He was about 6 years old, muscles tight, but movements cautious, like a soldier who never really left the war. His left ear had a nick, his right paw a faint scar. Ethan knelt outside the fence, watching him. "So, you're Duke?" he murmured. The dog tilted his head, not barking, not wagging, just staring, measuring the stranger. There was an intelligence in that gaze that unsettled Ethan. He'd seen men with eyes duller than that. From the corner of his vision, he noticed an older woman approaching, Sarah Whitfield, the veterinarian assigned to the center. She was in her mid-40s, tall and willowy. her blonde hair tied in a low ponytail streaked with gray. Her face was kind but firm, the kind of beauty that had endured rather than faded. Her hands were steady, her eyes quick, the look of someone who'd stitched too many wounds and buried too many pets. "Careful with him," Sarah said, nodding toward Duke. "He doesn't trust men in uniform anymore." Ethan stood. "Guess we've got that in common." Her brow arched slightly. "You must be Cole, the SEAL who punched a lieutenant?" He smirked faintly. "You heard about that." "News travels faster than a hurricane here," she said dryly. "Don't give me trouble, and we'll get along." Ethan spent the rest of the day cleaning kennels, fixing leaky pipes, and trying to ignore the ghosts whispering from every shadow of the compound. It wasn't hard labor that broke him. It was the quiet. After years of adrenaline, silence felt like punishment. Every bark from a distant dog jolted him like a gunshot. That evening, as the sun sank behind the pines, he sat outside Duke's kennel again. The dog hadn't eaten all day. Ethan slid a bowl of water closer. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't mean to end up here either." Duke sniffed the bowl, drank, then looked at him, really looked, as if judging whether this man was worth trusting. Ethan held his gaze until the dog huffed once, then lay down. It wasn't affection, but it wasn't rejection either. Sarah appeared again, carrying a clipboard. "You two might actually get along," she said. "He was Captain Hale's dog. Hale died overseas 2 years ago. Duke hasn't bonded with anyone since." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Hale, the one from Echo Unit?" She nodded. "You knew him?" "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "He saved my life in Yemen." For a long moment neither spoke. The cicadas filled the silence. Sarah finally broke it. "He kept Duke with him every mission. They say when the convoy got hit, the dog dragged him nearly half a mile before he collapsed. Duke was found guarding the body." Ethan looked at the animal, at the faint scars tracing its flank, the stillness that wasn't fear, but vigilance. "And they just stuck him here?" "He refused every new handler," Sarah said softly. "Until now, maybe." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The sound of distant barking mixed with the hum of the summer night. He sat on the porch, shirt clinging to his back, staring at the fireflies sparking over the fields. The air smelled of rain coming. Somewhere deep inside, the guilt still gnawed, for the man he punched, for the brother he lost, for every mission that had turned gray in his memory. Around midnight, Duke started barking, sharp, urgent, not the bored bark of a kennel dog. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and ran to the yard. The light swung across the fences and his stomach tightened. The back gate was open. He followed Duke's growls toward the storage shed behind the training field. The wooden door hung ajar, a faint metallic smell seeping out. Not oil, not blood, but something chemical. Duke stood rigid, hackles raised, nose pressed low to the dirt. Ethan stepped closer, the beam of light trembling as it passed over stacked crates marked with military codes. One of them was open. Inside, beneath a layer of tarp, glimmered plastic bags filled with white powder. Ethan froze, the heat of the night suddenly suffocating. Then, from the darkness behind him, a voice spoke, low, male, and too calm to be innocent. "Didn't anyone tell you, Cole?" the man said. "Some things around here aren't meant to be found." Ethan didn't move. The voice behind him was too steady to belong to someone frightened. Slowly, he turned, flashlight trembling in his hand. A man stepped from the shadows. tall, mid-40s, wearing civilian fatigues that still carried the creases of military precision. His hair was cropped close, black shot with gray, his face angular and stern. There was a scar just below his left eye that ran down to the corner of his lip, twisting his expression into something permanently half-smiling, half-threatening. His name tag read Sergeant Wade Holler. Though Ethan already recognized him, they had served together briefly in Iraq before Wade was discharged for disciplinary conflicts. It was whispered that he'd gone into private security, the kind that didn't ask too many questions. "Wade," Ethan said cautiously, lowering the flashlight but not his guard. "Didn't think I'd see you here." "Yeah, well," Wade replied, his southern drawl dragging like molasses, "I go where the pay's good. You should have stayed out of the shed, Cole. That's not your concern anymore." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Whose is it, then? Because it looks a hell of a lot like military property filled with narcotics." Wade stepped closer, his boots crunching over gravel. "You didn't see what you think you saw. Forget it, or you'll end up like the last guy who asked questions." Duke growled, the sound low and primal. Wade's gaze flicked toward the dog. "Still keeping animals around to fight your battles, huh?" Ethan took a step forward, his voice a cold whisper. "Careful, Wade. He doesn't like bullies." Wade smirked. "Neither do you. That's what got you sent here, isn't it?" Then, with a casual shrug, he turned and disappeared into the trees, his silhouette swallowed by the night. The next morning, Ethan met Sarah at the kennel. Her hair was pulled up messily, tendrils catching the sunlight. She noticed the dark circles under his eyes immediately. "Rough night?" He hesitated. "You could say that." She frowned. "You look like you haven't slept since the war." "Feels about right." He forced a grin, but it faded when she pressed further. "Ethan, what's going on?" He glanced toward the tree line where Wade had vanished. "Nothing, just old ghosts." Sarah didn't believe him, but she knew better than to push a soldier too soon. Instead, she handed him a clipboard. "Routine check at the supply yard. Some crates arrived from the base in Jacksonville. Make sure they're labeled right." He nodded, grateful for the distraction. Duke trotted beside him as they crossed the yard. The supply yard sat beyond the pines, where sunlight filtered through the leaves in green-gold ribbons. A forklift groaned somewhere in the distance, driven by Miles Torres, the maintenance worker, a lanky man in his early 30s with dark skin and a quiet, good-natured energy. He wore headphones, nodding to country music no one else could hear. "Morning, boss," Miles called, waving. "You here to check the new shipment?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "Anything unusual come in?" Miles shrugged. "Same old ammo cases, medical kits, MREs, though one of those crates smelled funny like paint thinner or something." He gestured toward the far end of the lot. Ethan walked over, Duke following, nose twitching. One crate had a faint stain seeping from the bottom, oily, almost sweet in scent. Ethan crouched, touching the mark. His fingers came away sticky. He sniffed. It wasn't paint thinner. It was acetone mixed with ether, common drug processing. He swore under his breath. "Everything all right?" Miles asked, pulling off his headphones. "Yeah," Ethan lied quickly, wiping his hand on his pants. "Just a spill." Miles nodded, unconvinced but polite enough not to pry. Back in the office, Sarah was updating vaccination records when Ethan entered. "Find anything?" He thought about lying again but decided otherwise. "Sarah, do you know anyone named Wade Holler?" She froze. Wade? Yeah. He used to work here. Security contractor for the depot. Left about a month before you came. Why? Ethan exhaled slowly. Because he was here last night. Told me to keep my mouth shut about something in the storage shed. Her eyes widened. Ethan, if he's involved, you need to report this. He's not stable. He got kicked out of the Marines after an investigation. Black market weapons, rumors of cartel ties. The guy's dangerous. Before Ethan could respond, Duke barked, sharp and urgent, from the yard. Sarah rushed to the window. A black SUV had pulled up near the outer fence. Two men in plain clothes stepped out, both broad, wearing mirrored sunglasses that didn't belong in farm country. One carried a clipboard. The other rested a hand casually on his hip where the bulge of a holster showed. "Who are they?" Sarah asked. Ethan's tone went flat. "Not Navy. Probably here for cleanup." The men approached. The one with the clipboard smiled too wide. "Morning. We're with Federal Logistics. Need to verify shipment codes for the Savannah training facility." Sarah blinked. "You mean this facility?" "Yes, ma'am, just routine. Can we take a quick look around?" Ethan's gut twisted. Everything about them screamed wrong. "Sure," he said evenly, gesturing toward the yard. "I'll escort you." As they walked, Duke trailed close, eyes fixed on the man with the gun. The clipboard agent, mid-50s, clean-shaven, pale, kept glancing at the dog like it made him nervous. His partner, taller, with cropped blonde hair and a tattoo peeking from under his collar, scanned the area constantly. Ethan led them to the storage shed. The blond man whistled low. Nice setup. Quiet. Out of sight. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "Perfect place to lose things?" The man smirked but said nothing. They pretended to inspect the crates, asking meaningless questions about serial numbers. When they were done, the older agent smiled again. "Appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Cole. Oh, one more thing. You didn't happen to open any of these crates, did you?" Ethan kept his face still. "No. Should I have?" The man's smile widened. No, just making sure everything stays contained." When the SUV finally left, Sarah exhaled shakily. "They were lying," she said. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, and they knew I was, too." That evening, he sat outside the kennels, the cicadas now replaced by the low hum of frogs near the swampy edges of the property. Duke lay beside him, head on his paws, eyes fixed toward the forest. "You felt it too, didn't you?" Ethan murmured. The dog's tail flicked once. Sarah joined him later, handing over a bottle of water. "You think those men were government?" "Maybe once," Ethan said. "But whatever they're guarding, it's not legal anymore." She hesitated, then pulled something from her pocket, a small metal emblem, tarnished and bent. "I found this near the supply yard after they left. Thought it might mean something." She handed it to him. Ethan turned it in his fingers. It was a silver badge fragment, engraved with two letters barely visible under dirt, E4. The rest had been melted away, but on the back, faintly scratched by hand, were words that made his blood run cold. "Echo Unit, still active." Duke's ears pricked, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Ethan looked up at the dark tree line beyond the yard, where a single figure now stood, watching. When the flashlight beam swung toward it, the shape was gone, leaving only the whisper of pines swaying under the heavy Georgia night. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the pines like shards of glass, cutting across the damp earth. The air was heavy with humidity, thick enough to taste. Ethan Cole sat on the back steps of the kennel, his elbows on his knees, turning the broken emblem Sarah had given him over and over in his hands. Echo Unit. Still active. The word scraped against his mind like grit under skin. It wasn't supposed to exist. Echo Unit had been dissolved after an ambush in Honduras 8 years ago. At least, that's what the file said. Duke lay a few feet away, half in shadow, his fur glistening in the morning light. The dog's ears flicked back and forth, alert, even in rest. Ethan reached down, brushing his hand over Duke's head. "You ever get the feeling," he muttered, "that the war just changes its name?" The sound of approaching footsteps drew his attention. It was Major Paul Kensington, the new regional logistics officer. Ethan hadn't met him before, but the man's reputation preceded him. Sharp, efficient, and unflinching. Kensington was in his late 40s, tall and lean, with silver hair slicked neatly back and skin tanned like old leather. His blue eyes were piercing, assessing everything and everyone with quiet calculation. He wore civilian slacks and a crisp white shirt, but the way he carried himself screamed military discipline. "Mr. Cole," Kensington said smoothly, extending a hand. "Heard you're our new kennel master. Fine work you've been doing?" Ethan stood, shaking his hand. Kensington's grip was firm, too firm, a statement of dominance. "Didn't know we had visitors," Ethan said. "Routine check?" Kensington replied, his smile polite but empty. "Supply chains, personnel behavior, security protocols. The usual." His gaze drifted toward Duke. "Fine animal you've got there." "He's not mine," Ethan said. "He belongs to the government. I just keep him alive." "That's more than most manage," Kensington murmured. Sarah appeared then, wiping her hands on a towel. She was already sweating under the heat, a streak of dust on her cheek. "Major Kensington, I didn't expect you till next week." Kensington smiled faintly. "Schedules change. Paperwork waits for no one." His tone was polite, but his eyes lingered on Sarah a fraction too long, not with lust, but with calculation, as if measuring how much she knew. After he left, Sarah turned to Ethan. "That man gives me the creeps." "Because he's too clean," Ethan said. "The ones who hide dirt always are." By noon, the temperature had climbed into the 90s. Ethan and Duke headed down to the river that cut behind the property, an old stream used years ago for water drills. The current was slow, shimmering under the green canopy. Duke waded in, lapping at the cool water. Ethan crouched at the edge, skimming his hand across the surface, lost in thought. He heard a branch snap behind him. His instincts flared. Years of training never died. He turned sharply, hand on the knife at his belt. A figure emerged from the tree line, Leah Grayson, the facility's communications technician. She was in her late 20s, short, with chestnut hair pulled into a tight braid and freckles scattered across a face too young to already look so tired. Her uniform was wrinkled, her nails ink-stained, the mark of someone who spent too much time in front of computers and too little in sunlight. "Didn't mean to scare you," she said, lifting her hands. "Sarah sent me to find you, said you were skipping lunch again." Ethan relaxed, lowering his knife. "You always sneak up on people like that?" She smirked faintly. "Only the ones acting suspicious." Leah knelt by the river, tossing a pebble across the water. "You've been asking questions," she said after a moment, "about Wade Holler, about shipments." Ethan studied her. "You been listening in?" She shrugged. "It's my job. I monitor all base communications." She paused, her tone lowering. "Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but something's wrong with the network logs. Files are being accessed remotely by an old ID that shouldn't exist anymore. What ID? She looked around, then whispered, Echo 42. The world seemed to tilt. Ethan's pulse quickened. That's impossible. That unit's dead. Then explain why their signal keeps pinging from our satellite uplink. Same frequency, same encryption. She hesitated, chewing her lip. Whoever they are, they're rerouting manifests, replacing our supply codes with dummy logs. Someone's using this base to move cargo that isn't supposed to exist. Before Ethan could respond, Duke barked. Low, warning. The dog's gaze snapped toward the opposite bank. Something metallic gleamed beneath the water's surface, half buried in silt. Ethan stepped closer, wading in ankle deep. The current licked at his boots as he reached down. His fingers brushed cold metal. He pulled it free, a dog tag, corroded but still legible. The inscription read, Capt. Riker Hale, Echo Unit, deceased. Sarah had told him Riker was dead. Everyone had. But this tag was fresh, edges sharp, the chain intact. Duke sniffed it and whined softly, tail drooping. Leah's voice trembled. That can't be real. Ethan's grip tightened on the tag. It's real, he said quietly, and it means someone's been lying. For a long time. That evening, Ethan brought the tag to Sarah. She sat in her office, the light from her desk lamp painting her face in amber tones. This was in the river, he said, placing it before her. She picked it up with gloved fingers, her expression unreadable. You're sure it's not a fake? She asked. It still smells like oil, Ethan replied, like it's been handled recently. Sarah exhaled. Riker was part of Echo Unit. He trained Duke. He died saving his team during an extraction in Honduras. Then why is his tag under 10 miles of Georgia dirt? Ethan asked. Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her drawer and pulled out an envelope. It was old, edges worn, sealed with tape that had yellowed with time. Riker sent this to me 2 months before he died. I never told anyone. She handed it to him. I think you should read it. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in Riker's clean, deliberate handwriting. If this letter reaches you, something's gone wrong. The unit's compromised. Don't trust command. Echo isn't what it seems. They're using the dogs. They're using us to move product under government cover. The shipments go through Savannah. If I don't make it back, burn everything. They can't know what we found. Ethan's hands trembled slightly. He knew, he whispered, all of it. Sarah nodded, her face pale. And now they know you know. Outside, Duke barked again, once, then twice, sharp and urgent. Ethan rushed to the window, headlights swept across the compound, tires grinding over gravel. A black SUV was approaching fast, its engine too smooth to belong to anything local. Ethan turned to Sarah, voice low. Get the files, hide them. She grabbed the letter, shoving it into a drawer just as the SUV screeched to a halt outside the main office. 2 silhouettes stepped out, backlit by the high beams, both armed, both moving like professionals. Duke growled, muscles tensing. Ethan's hand went instinctively to his holster. Sarah whispered, Ethan, what do we do? He looked toward the door, then down at the tag in his hand, the one that shouldn't exist. We find out, he said, what really happened to Echo. And as the first knock echoed through the quiet Georgia night, the air seemed to hold its breath. The pounding on the office door came again, harder this time. Ethan's hand tightened around his pistol as Duke's growl deepened, reverberating through the darkened room. The SUV's headlights still cut across the window blinds like knives of white light. "Sarah, stay low," Ethan whispered. She crouched behind the desk, clutching the drawer that held Riker's letter. The knock stopped. Silence hung for 3 long seconds, and then a voice called out. Calm, commanding. "Mr. Cole, we just need to ask a few questions." Ethan recognized the tone, controlled, official, the kind meant to sound harmless before a raid. He peeked through the blinds. 2 men stood by the SUV. One was the blond man from before, the one with the tattoo on his neck. The other was new, older, heavier, with short cropped gray hair and a square face. He wore a linen shirt that strained against his chest and a badge clipped to his belt that glinted under the light. "Federal Narcotics Task Division," the man called again. "You're in possession of evidence from a restricted case." Ethan opened the door halfway, pistol hidden behind his leg. "You show up at midnight for evidence collection?" he asked. The older man smiled thinly. "When the case involves missing federal property, yes." He nodded toward the letter on the desk. "We'll need to take that." Sarah's voice came from behind Ethan, steady but defiant. "You don't have a warrant." The man's eyes flicked to her, assessing, not surprised. "Dr. Whitfield, isn't it? I'd advise you to cooperate. You've done good work here. Be ashamed to see it shut down." Before Ethan could answer, Duke barked and lunged forward, fur bristling. That was when Ethan saw it. A third figure slipping around the side of the building, rifle raised. Instinct took over. "Down!" he shouted, pulling Sarah to the floor as gunfire shredded the windows. The office erupted in glass and dust. Duke bolted toward the back door, barking wildly. Ethan fired twice through the wall, enough to force silence. When the gunfire stopped, the SUV's engine roared to life. Tires screamed on gravel, fading into the night. Ethan helped Sarah up. Her hands were shaking, a thin cut across her cheek from flying glass. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "They weren't federal, were they?" "No," Ethan said. "They were Echo." Minutes later, they gathered what they could. The letter, the dog tag, a flash drive Leah had backed up from the server. Leah herself arrived breathless, still in her gray hoodie, hair unbraided and tangled. "I saw them from the comm shack," she panted. "They wiped the main drive remotely. Everything's gone except the backup." Ethan took the flash drive, slipping it into his pocket. "Then that's what they came for." Sarah's voice trembled. "We can't stay here." He nodded. "We won't. Pack medical supplies. Leah, grab your laptop and comms gear. We're leaving in 10 minutes. They loaded into Ethan's truck, Duke leaping into the back seat. The road out of the compound wound through pine forest, thick and black. As they drove, headlights flashing through the trees, Sarah sat in silence, clutching her medical bag like a lifeline. Leah typed furiously on her laptop, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. "There's a signal coming from Fort Buchanan," she said. "Encrypted, military grade. Whoever's sending it, they know we're moving." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then we go dark." He reached over and yanked the GPS unit from the dashboard, tossing it into the roadside ditch. No trace. 20 minutes later, they reached the outskirts of Savannah. The air smelled of salt and magnolia, the night still alive with heat. They pulled into an abandoned marina where the water lapped softly against old wooden piers. Ethan parked behind a boathouse. "We'll stay here till morning," he said. Inside, the boathouse was dusty but solid. Rusted nets hung from beams, and a single bulb swung overhead. Sarah cleaned the cut on her cheek, her reflection trembling in a cracked mirror. Leah set up her laptop on a crate, linking cables and antennas she'd salvaged. "I managed to copy partial coordinates before the system went offline," she said. "If we can decrypt them, we'll know where the shipments are going." Ethan leaned over her shoulder. "Can you do it?" Leah nodded. "Maybe, but whoever's behind Echo, they're using ghost networks. This isn't cartel tech, it's military." A creak echoed from outside. Duke stiffened instantly, ears forward, body coiled. Ethan motioned for silence, moving to the window. Through the slats he saw movement near the dock, a small motorboat gliding across the water, lights off. 3 figures, one at the helm, 2 crouched low. He turned to Sarah. "They found us." "They killed the lamp." Moonlight spilled in through the gaps in the wall, painting everyone in silver. Duke's breathing grew shallow, a low rumble building in his chest. The boat docked softly, and footsteps creaked on the planks. Ethan gripped his sidearm, heart pounding in rhythm with the footsteps outside. Then came a voice, low, familiar, almost mocking. "You always were bad at hiding, Cole." Wade Haller stepped into the light. His clothes were soaked from the river, rifle slung across his back. 2 men followed, mercenaries by the look of them, faces blank beneath black caps. Wade smiled, that scar tugging the corner of his mouth. "You've been busy. Letter, dog tag, data. You just keep digging holes." Ethan aimed his pistol. "Why, Wade, you were a soldier once." "Still am," Wade said, "just fighting for a side that pays its debts." He nodded toward the letter in Ethan's hand. "That thing's worth more than your life. Hand it over." Sarah stepped forward before Ethan could stop her. "You killed Riker, didn't you?" she said, her voice shaking. "He found out what Echo was doing." Wade's grin faded. "Riker made choices. So did I. You want to stay alive? You'll make the right one, too." Ethan moved first. He shoved a crate over, sending it crashing into Wade's legs, and fired. Chaos exploded in the boathouse. Bullets sparking against metal, Duke lunging, Sarah screaming. Leah dove behind a pile of nets, clutching her laptop. Wade returned fire, a bullet grazing Ethan's shoulder. Pain seared down his arm, but adrenaline drowned it. Duke leapt onto one of the mercenaries, teeth sinking deep into his arm. "Run!" Ethan shouted to the women. Sarah grabbed Leah, dragging her toward the back exit. The air reeked of salt, smoke, and gunpowder. Ethan tackled Wade, the 2 men hitting the floor hard. The fight was brutal. Fists, elbows, the scrape of boots on concrete. Wade slammed Ethan against the wall, snarling, "You think you can stop what's coming? Echo's not a unit anymore. It's an army." Ethan's hand found a rusted crowbar. He swung. It connected with Wade's side, sending him staggering. Before he could recover, Duke lunged, knocking Wade down. Ethan grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her toward the dock. "Go now!" They sprinted toward the truck, the night alive with fire from behind them. The boathouse burned orange against the river, flames licking the walls. Leah coughed, clutching her bag. "The drive! It's in there!" Ethan turned back. Through the smoke, he saw Wade crawl to his knees, eyes burning with hate. "You can't run from Echo!" he shouted. The roof gave way with a roar, sparks raining into the water. Ethan shoved everyone into the truck, Duke jumping into the bed. As they sped away, the explosion lit the night behind them. The boathouse consumed by flame. Sarah pressed a hand to his bleeding shoulder, voice trembling. "What now?" Ethan stared at the fire in the rearview mirror. "We go to Fort Buchanan," he said. we finish what Riker started. But as they turned down the coastal highway, a new sound rose over the wind. The distant thump of helicopter blades approaching fast from the east. The helicopter's blades carved through the night like the heartbeat of a machine that refused to die. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, sweat stinging his eyes as the headlights cut through the coastal fog. Sarah pressed a towel against his shoulder wound, her hands trembling despite her calm voice. "You're losing blood," she said. "Pull over, I can stitch it." Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. They'll find us if we stop." In the back seat, Leah clutched her laptop, eyes fixed on the screen as lines of encrypted code flickered across it. Duke sat beside her, panting heavily, his ears twitching every time the chopper swept overhead. The road curved inland, leading them toward Fort Buchanan, a decommissioned training site half swallowed by moss and silence. It sat on the edge of the marshlands, isolated, forgotten, and, according to Riker's letter, the final hub of the Echo unit operation. The moon hung low, ghostly against the fog. Ethan parked the truck under a collapsed hangar, shutting off the engine. "We go on foot," he said quietly. "No lights." They moved through the ruins, rusted fences, crumbling barracks, wild vines curling around what had once been order. The air smelled of salt and mildew. Every sound, every drip, every buzz of an insect felt amplified. Sarah stayed close behind Ethan, her brown eyes scanning the shadows. Leah followed, clutching her laptop and a flashlight wrapped in cloth to dim the beam. Duke led the way, his paws silent against the dirt, nose twitching. They reached a concrete bunker half buried under roots. The steel door was slightly ajar. Faded letters above it read, "Research Storage. Authorized personnel only." Ethan motioned for silence. He eased the door open, and a gust of stale metallic air hit them. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered weakly to life as Leah tapped a switch. The room stretched deep, rows of metal crates, desks covered in dust, computer servers humming faintly despite years of abandonment. "This is it," Leah whispered. "Fort Buchanan's data hub. The mainframe still online." She hurried to one of the terminals, plugging in her laptop. Ethan stood guard, his eyes darting between the shadows. Sarah examined the surroundings, glass cabinets, medical records, and files labeled Canine Integration Program. She froze at one folder, her voice barely audible. "Ethan, this isn't just about drugs." He turned. The folder contained photos of military dogs, hundreds of them, each tagged with barcodes, each listed as decommissioned. But attached beside every dog's file was a corresponding human profile, names, blood types, and neural interface logs. Sarah's voice broke slightly. They were experimenting, pairing human neurological data with canine reflex systems, trying to build soldiers that could think and react as one. Ethan stared at Duke, who stood still, head tilted, as if understanding. "They used them," he said quietly. "Used both sides." Leah typed rapidly, pulling files into her drive. "If I can copy this, it'll be enough to expose them, every name, every shipment, every test subject." But before she could finish, the light snapped off. A cold voice echoed through the bunker's speakers. "You should have stayed gone, Cole." It was Major Paul Kensington. His voice carried the weight of command, calm, deliberate, and lethal. "You were never meant to find this place." A spotlight burst from the far end of the bunker, blinding them. Kensington stood behind a barricade of crates, a pistol steady in his hand. He was no longer in pressed white. Now he wore black tactical gear, the silver hair slicked back, his face drawn tight with fury. Behind him were soldiers, not official, but private, faces masked. Wade Holler limped beside him, bandaged from their last fight, hatred etched deep. "You ruined years of work," Kensington said. "Echo could have changed warfare, made it clean, efficient, but people like you still believe in loyalty and conscience. Those are obsolete." Ethan stepped forward, voice rough. "You called it Echo because it's what's left of men like you. Just noise after the truth dies." Kensington sneered. "You think the world wants heroes? They want results. Riker understood that. Until he didn't. That's why he's buried here." The word struck like a bullet. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You killed him." "Not personally," Kensington said, "but I gave the order." Gunfire erupted before Ethan could reply. He dove behind a crate, dragging Sarah down. Leah screamed as bullets shredded the walls. Duke sprinted into the smoke, barking fiercely. The sound of chaos filled the room, metal clanging, sparks flying. Wade advanced through the haze, rifle raised. "It's over, Cole!" he shouted. Ethan rolled out from cover, firing twice, one bullet catching Wade in the leg. The man fell, cursing. Leah shouted from the console, "I've got the files, uploading them to open channels, military press, everything." Kensington's voice roared, "Shut it down!" He charged forward, firing at the terminal. The bullet grazed Leah's arm, but she didn't stop typing. Sparks flew as one of the servers exploded, sending flames up the wall. Sarah dragged Leah away, blood streaking her sleeve. Ethan rose from cover, advancing toward Kensington. The two men met in the center of the burning room. Smoke curled between them. Kensington swung first, catching Ethan across the jaw. Ethan retaliated with a blow to the ribs. Years of training collided, precision against rage. "You were a soldier once," Ethan said through gritted teeth. "You fought for something." "I still do," Kensington hissed. "For control." He raised his gun, but Duke lunged from behind, teeth sinking into his wrist. The shot fired wild, echoing off the concrete. Ethan grabbed Kensington's arm and twisted. The gun clattered to the floor. With a final shove, Ethan threw him backward into the server racks. Electricity sparked, and the man convulsed as current arced through the metal. When silence fell, only the crackle of fire remained. Wade lay unconscious. Kensington's body slumped beside the melted console. Leah stood trembling but alive, her laptop still streaming data through the last intact router. "It's out there now," she whispered. "The world knows." Ethan knelt beside Duke, brushing soot from his fur. The dog's muzzle was singed, eyes tired but bright. "Good boy," he murmured. By dawn, the bunker had burned to its bones. Firefighters from the nearest town arrived hours too late. The news spread fast. Leaked files, names, photos of soldiers and dogs used in illegal experiments. The Echo program was finished. Weeks later, Savannah's coastline glowed under the summer sun again. At an open field outside town, veterans and handlers worked together to rebuild the training center, now renamed the Riker Foundation, dedicated to pairing rescued dogs with recovering soldiers. Sarah stood beside a row of kennels, her blonde hair tucked under the sun hat, smiling faintly. Leah, arms still bandaged, set up new comms equipment inside the office. Ethan walked with Duke across the grass, his limp almost gone, his expression quiet. He stopped by a small memorial stone near the oak tree. The engraving read, "Captain Riker Hale, soldier, friend, believer." Ethan placed Riker's dog tag at its base. "You were right," he whispered. Echo didn't end. It changed. But now it's ours to rebuild. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and salt. Duke sat beside him, ears perked, tail sweeping the grass. Ethan smiled. Come on, partner. We've got work to do. Above them, a lone helicopter crossed the sky. Not a threat this time, but a reminder. The past would always echo, but now, at last, it was a song of peace. When the smoke cleared over Fort Buchanan, what remained wasn't just silence. It was grace, the kind that doesn't roar like thunder, but whispers like wind through pine trees. Ethan didn't win because he was the strongest, or fastest, or even right. He survived because something greater than logic watched over him. Something that moves unseen through loyalty, sacrifice, and love. Maybe that's what miracles really are. Not flashes of light from the sky, but small acts of faith hidden in the everyday. A soldier choosing compassion over vengeance, a wounded dog refusing to give up on its handler, a stranger stopping to help when no one else would. These are the quiet fingerprints of God, reminders that even when the world burns, heaven still breathes through those who choose good over gain. As Ethan stood beside Duke in that field, sunlight spilling across the grass, he finally understood. The war had never been about enemies. It had been about endurance, about grace. And grace, when shared, multiplies. If you're watching this right now, maybe this story found you for a reason. Maybe you, too, are fighting a battle no one sees. Don't give up. Miracles haven't stopped. They're just waiting for hearts brave enough to notice. May God bless every soul who still believes in loyalty, love, and second chances.